common among a farmer cultivating his piece of land and atoms of sodium and chlorine uniting together to form what we know as a table salt and grand cosmic movement. It is the same drive and inherent lack that exists everywhere across the universe, moving both human action and natural world towards fulfillment. The dismal news is that this fulfillment will be never fully achieved. For lack, as our multidisciplinary peer-reviewed studies have revealed, is a universal and fundamental condition, a purposeful element that drives all change and advancement. The uplifting news is that lack is a constant force present across the structure of being and within each of us. It propels atoms to bond, creatures to grow, and humans to act. It is known to us as incompleteness, insufficiency, need, imperfection, and scarcity. It surrounds us, around us, and within us. For a very simple example, just imagine a grain of wheat. It grows toward the sun because it lacks light, and its roots dig deep into the earth because it lacks water and minerals. Lack propels it to transform from a single seed into a strong plant. And at each moment, just think of it. What a miracle. It lacks the feature that will appear the next instant. Features that are not yet here. Lack is what is not here yet. The first and probably the best metaphor we find in the book of Genesis, where it says that there was no grass, for there was no rain yet. And what does the Bible say about the seed that we looked at? It will bring a harvest that can yield 30, 60, and even 100 times what was sown. A biblical metaphor that speaks to the power of lack driving life to multiply and flourish. This principle of lack is neither a flaw nor a mistake of a creator, but rather a purposeful driver of change and advancement, a force that compels everything towards fulfillment. Lack is a perpetual mobile of this universe. Isn't this a wonderful news? Lack manifests itself in time, space, and matter. And we face it everywhere. We lack time. That's an easy example. We crave bread. Today, the young colleagues probably may lack a vegan meal without allergens. We all pine for love, fall short of health, and strive for meaning. And it all has a common denominator. This world is not completed. And humans are distinct in that we do not merely grow through lack, we are all conscious of lack. We experience a profound sense of lack, whether it be knowledge, social connection, beauty, love, and this drives much of our intellectual and existential pursuits. Our neurons are designed to notice insufficiencies, imperfections, incompleteness around us. We find out what can be improved, and we always respond to that. That's why human beings is the only creature that has aims. And Ludwig von Mises, in his theory of human action, explains that we always act to remove some uneasiness. This is, in Mises' language, how he calls lack. We respond to what we lack. And no wonder that scarcity in the economic domain is a mere reflection of this universal principle. And therefore, economic thinking and action of men is a response to scarcity. And it is found in all social systems. Capitalism is not the first system. People have always toiled, cooperated, exchanged, invested, and innovated in response to lack. Materially, we lack the necessary resources for sustenance and procreation, and we respond to this lack through our productive effort. First, we gathered wild fruits, mushrooms, and hunted animals. Eventually, we learned to cultivate wheat, harnessing its natural capacity to produce a bountiful harvest, far beyond what we saw. And this act of cultivation is not just a method of survival, but a profound reflection of humanity's ability to transform and multiply scarce resources. All productive human efforts, whether in agriculture, industry, or technology, mirror this principle of cultivation. That's how economic institutions, property, money, exchange, have evolved. And lack forces us to innovate, and it drives technological progress. It is this invisible element that taught us to take a stick to make our hand longer, to use a car instead of a horse, and to turn our homes into smart houses that are sometimes smarter than we would like. Only because there is lack do we have aims and exercise our liberty. Man could not become steward of this earth if it were already complete, with all life and all beauty made manifest, all buildings constructed, and all meaning fully understood. Liberty is a dialogue with incompleteness. And here is where moral dimension comes in. Every response to lack involves a moral choice. We can respond productively by creating synergies and cooperating with each other, or we can use force or fraud, taking what belongs to others. Alleviating lack can be malicious and cause destructive effects. In history, we have seen both paths, cooperation through exchange or conflict through coercion, as well as manipulation and fraud. In older systems like feudalism and slavery, force was institutionalized. Whether it was one village raiding another for grain or livestock, or whole groups being denied their liberty, like in slavery. The use of power to secure what was lacking was commonplace. And among the moral responses to lack, I name not only labor, exchange, and cooperation, but also self-responsibility and economization, which are familiar concepts to everyone. Yet they are frequently misunderstood and mistaken for greed, which is unchecked self-responsibility and economization. And anecdotally, when it comes to our own actions, we tend to call it thrift and prudence, and when it comes to the others, we are quick to spot greed and selfishness. A curious little double standard. Of course, the golden mean is important, and as the lecturer spoke before me, if you go to the extremes, you are in trouble. Self-responsibility and economization can become greed and selfishness, and on the opposite, it can be waste of resources, non-caring about anything, non-counting, or asking the society to be responsible for your provision. So, capitalism has played a crucial role in liberating humanity from the reliance on force for survival. By establishing a framework where no one is deprived of liberty, property is well protected, and value is created through productive labor and peacefully exchanged in free markets, capitalism provides a much improved alternative to winners takes all mindset of LS systems, where one person gain often came at the expense of the other. It has allowed people to serve each other and meet others' needs cooperatively through trade rather than conflict, with considerably fewer swords involved. So institutions of ethical sustenance are now in place, and this doesn't mean capitalism eliminates personal moral choices and moral failures. Individuals can still take poor choices. And we experience that outside us and inside us quite frequently. But at its core, capitalism has removed institutional oppression and systemic violations of human dignity, offering a structure that honors the freedom and agency of individuals, enabling them to respond to scarcity with creativity and collaboration. Whether our response to lack is moral or immoral quite strongly depends on the system we are living in and on how we understand the morality of this system. Capitalism has removed the need for coercion. Yet the win or lose mentality is within human minds and human hearts. Faithful people could say it comes from the original sin. It can also come from lack of time. Time is too short to take perfect choices sometimes. So we are always in a in a limited situation to take perfect moral choices. And probably the Jewish people know that very well because they give 10% for as their gifts, because they admit that whenever they act, they always can hurt some other people. So they just give 10% as a matter of this admission. And so the belief that capitalism is morally evil strengthens the morally wrong choices. We will come to that later. This is the predatory mentality, which is quite widespread, but also widespread is the victim mentality that leads to self-defeat and distrust without cause. As the predatory mentality leads to coercion without need and fraud without need, then victim mentality leads to self-defeat without a cause. And people with this mentality believe that exchange is a zero-sum game, that an entrepreneur's profits are purely exploitative, and that the only cause of profit is greed. To them, the world is unjust, and they live their lives feeling like losers. Do you know many people like that? Unfortunately, I do. So understanding the role of lack may help us to remove the will and grasp the plus-sum nature of exchange and the role of entrepreneur in mitigating plentiful lacks on behalf of society, his employees and consumers. The plus-sum game of exchange becomes clear when we recognize that each party enters into exchange driven by their own needs, and that the only way to meet my need is to fulfill the need of the other. Only by serving others can we respond to our own scarcities. And because we each seek and we each value different things, exchange occurs, and value is created. Value arises not only from toil, but from the very act of exchange, a process often overlooked. I call it an invisible miracle and even a divine mercy of exchange. It frees us from relying on force and deception to meet our need. If the world was really a zero-sum game place, we would be doomed always to enter an exchange as a battle where I can win at your cost, or I will be the loser. That would be really a dumb place to live. But the mission of the entrepreneur is largely hidden as well. He has to respond to numerous needs and unite scarce resources, administering countless scarcities, each of which is constantly fluctuating. The COVID was a great example that showed us how a businessman has to administer those scarce resources when prices are going up and down. And suddenly the resources are in shortage. And he has to ensure resources are available despite what happens on the market. And he has to manage the scarcity of labor. And all of these scarcities are delegated to him by his employees, who do not have to care about supply issues, about sales, about changing technologies very quickly, about the situation on the markets, on the global markets, about competitors, about regulators, and about the final results. So the employee is free from having to deal with all of these scarcities. Instead, he has his own scarcities, which are much smaller. He has to deal with the deadlines that seem to come too soon, the rapid pace of work, and the challenge of maintaining quality while he's seeking to balance work and leisure. And of course, naturally, we all find our salaries falling behind what we deserve. This is a basic principle. And this principle is hurting and making us all blind. And the entrepreneur is under constant pressure from the consumer, who wants everything to be cheaper, of better quality, and delivered faster. We don't want to wait 6 months for a car. Naturally, we need it next week, right? And it is the consumer who ultimately limits the need to hurry in our workplaces, to be efficient, to save resources, and he limits our ability to pay salaries, those as we think we deserve. And here is the irony. The consumer and the employee are the same people. And we do not recognize that. We do not understand that scarcity is splitting our hearts, and we have two different motivations. And we actually, what is most important, that we are pressed by scarcity, which is transmitted through the entrepreneur, through the businessman, through the capitalist society, but it does not originate from them. This is probably the most important part of my presentation, because people think if the pressure comes from my employer, he is the source of my lack of money, shortage of time, disbalance of work and leisure. And the same consumers, they would like to have everything cheaper, and best of all, if it would cost zero at all. So the role of entrepreneur is enormous. If only people would understand it, they would have to thank them daily, buying things, going to work, getting their salaries daily, in every simple service. But since this mission is hidden, and it is veiled by this tension with scarcity, what we hate is not scarcity, but it is the capitalist society at large. And Marxism, of course, attempts to comfort this tension by explaining that everything is rooted in exploitation and fraud. The world would indeed be damned if this was truly so. But when we understand the role of lack, we can even accept the function of profit as a measure of success of using scarce resources on behalf of the society, and as a force with an ecological function, ensuring that resources are used to the best benefit of the society. That's probably why the economics is often called the dismal science. Our studies show that economics is the only domain of human life where scarcity and lack have manifested itself so clearly. And we have a great helper of our economic life, money, which evolved to sign scarcity, which evolved to measure things which are scarce and to enable exchange of those scarce things. We could continue to any field of our life, especially to friendship, family, everything. We would find creative life. We would find the same tensions and importance of understanding the role of lack. But economics today still is the only field, the only domain where it is so visible. And therefore, we dislike it. But as I started my presentation, scarcity and lack is a driver. So we should not just hate it. So the organic human response to lack removed the need to use force and fraud and created institutions of peaceful and ethical sustenance. But of course, morality is not driven solely by knowledge, but also it depends on the spirit. And my message also brings some insight into our spiritual and religious life, because understanding lack may open precious avenues for spiritual and religious advancement, a path of perpetual conversion, some people know what it means, and embracing the comfort of never fully fulfilling, never being fully complete. So this should not be a sign of sadness, but a sign of going ahead. And today humanity ventures into the vast reaches of the cosmos and administers the smallest nanoparticles in the human body. Perhaps I say it is a time to acknowledge the invisible yet so powerful element shaping our existence, lack, and come to peace with the roles that we each play in society in response to it. Why it is important? According to the moral philosophy, if a person believes that certain aims are evil, yet continues to pursue them, they act in moral conflict. And the means they use do not matter anymore. And we heard from the first lecture how many people, including entrepreneurs, believe that capitalism is immoral. So this is really an important message. And the same applies if someone believes an entire system is immoral, yet engaged with it daily. They perpetuate a state of moral compromise and conflicting beliefs in their action. And we know how many people today believe that capitalism is immoral and that every market exchange is a battle where they must win or at another's expense or lose. By embracing this false belief, they morally compromise themselves and live in a state of moral disintegrity. But if we can help justify capitalism through understanding that lack is a universal principle and to find out the relationship with lack, not hating the other person, we can liberate people from this morally conflicted stance. It is crucial to separate the institutions that we use from the moral choices that we ourselves are taking. And by recognizing lack as universal principles, we open the doors for people to make truly moral choices, not only in economic action, but in every human relationship. This is how this invisible principle can help us take moral choices in life, work, and exchange. Since most of us today live in capitalist societies, working in a private enterprises, studying in a private universities, or running our own businesses. So if we recognize that capitalism foundation is not inherently immoral, we understand that every moral choice we make can contribute to the ethical framework we live in. And we would learn to stand face to face with omnipresent lack and feel how it affects our hearts, how it affects the social framework around us throughout ages, and how to respond to it in a mature human and not animal manner. Lack left unrecognized fosters morally conflicted and action, while understood and accepted lack nurtures morality, which will still require strong character, will, and, of course, some grace. And here you can scan the invisible lack becoming visible. And I'm thrilled to think that as just free exchange multiplies value, so may uncovering the deeper moral foundations of capitalism allow us to multiply the moral choices and values in our society. Millions and probably billions people are waiting for moral choices.